now parents are literally dragging their kids outside because they're stuck in their basement playing video games or with their head buried in screens and on phones. And it's creating a really scary situation where not only are symptoms emerging like eye strain and fatigue and headaches and blurry vision and emotional problems and psychological problems, but we're now seeing that nearsightedness is at an all-time high. And screens present all this visual stress up close that forces our brain and our eyes to actually alter. Our eyes elongate and become more nearsighted. And we now have research and data coming out from the last 3 years that, especially with kids, nearsightedness is at an all-time high. It's estimated by 2050 that 50% of the world will be nearsighted.
If you haven't done so already, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. It's a little red button. You punch that, and it's going to notify you every time we put out a new episode that can help you improve your bone health. And then also, if you haven't done so already, head over to BoneCoach.com, sign up for the free 7-day Osteoporosis Kickstart. That's going to walk you through everything you need to be doing right now to get on the path to improvement and stronger bones. After you do those two things, go ahead and press play on this episode, and I'll see you inside. Welcome to this episode of the BoneCoach Show. Joining us today to explore the misdiagnosis and missed opportunities of vision, why healthcare has it all wrong about the eyes, plus how your vision ties into your bones, is Dr. Bryce Appelbaum. Dr. Appelbaum is on a mission to change the way the world views vision. He believes there is more to vision than just 20/20 eyesight and has developed programs to retrain the brain to revise the eyes. Dr. Appelbaum has been featured on the front page of USA Today, CBS, New York Times, many other magazines and features. He's a 2022 recipient of the Future of Health Award at the Mindshare Leadership Summit, and this is the largest natural healthcare practitioner summit out there. He's been on the same stages as Dr. Joe Dispenza, Marie Forleo, JJ Virgin, and many others. And he's also been a podcast and media guest on Mind Body Green, Chris Kresser's Revolution Health Radio, and Cynthia Thurlow's Everyday Wellness Podcast. Dr. Appelbaum is a pioneer in neurooptometry, passionate about unlocking life's potential through vision. His expertise includes reorganizing the visual brain post-concussion to return to learn and return to life, remediating visual development delays, interfering with reading and learning, and enhancing visual skills to elevate performance. And especially, he does work in sports as well. On top of that, he's the owner and managing director of Appelbaum Vision, a private practice specializing in vision therapy and rehabilitation with offices in Bethesda and Annapolis, Maryland. He's the founder and CEO of ScreenFit, the premier eye doctor-created online vision training program designed to transform your tired, strained, and blurry computer eyes into HD clear vision. Dr. Appelbaum is a board-certified fellow of the College of Optometrists in Vision Development and an adjunct clinical professor at the Southern College of Optometry. He completed his undergraduate degree from Washington University in St. Louis, woot woot, that's where I'm at, where he majored in psychology and pre-medical studies and graduated with clinical honors from the Illinois College of Optometry. He is certified in corneal refractive therapy, orthokeratology, a specialty contact lens approach to slowing down nearsightedness and improving eyesight as an alternative to refractive surgery. Dr. Bryce Appelbaum, it is great to have you here today, and great to see you again, too, by the way.
Great to see you, my man. I'm so excited to be here and excited to share anything I can with the BoneCoach community.
I'm looking forward to it. I think we're all going to learn a lot here today. So let's start out with, and I'll even just start this out for our audience, of why I wanted to talk to Dr. Bryce is because there is a connection between our vision and our bone health too. There are other things that we want to talk about today that are so important that are going to affect your vision, your children, your grandchildren's vision. So we're going to get into all those things too. But let's even just start out with your bones. And I'll just kind of tee it up with, we need good vision, partially because we need to help see our physical surroundings around us clearly, and we need to be able to maintain our balance. Maintaining your balance is going to play a major role in protecting yourself from falls. And 1 out of 5 falls causes a serious injury, such as broken bones or a head injury. And each year, at least 300,000 people are hospitalized for hip fractures, and more than 95% of hip fractures are caused by falling. So We need to make sure we're maintaining our balance, and vision plays a big role in that. Dr. Bryce, can you share maybe what are some other parts of vision that could be contributing to our bone health that we just need to be aware of?
Absolutely. So let me start with just a distinction that I think will be important here so that we can kind of understand where I'm coming from. And that's the difference between eyesight and vision. And I think we need to view those as separate entities. Eyesight being the ability to see, whether that's letters on a chart or street sign, or, for a child, what the teacher writes on the board in the classroom. Vision is far more complex. Vision is brain, and how our brain tells our eyes how to move and focus and converge and process information, and how we derive meaning from the world around us and direct the appropriate action. Vision, evolutionarily is intended to help us navigate our three-dimensional world, and vision helps guide our movement. And vision is something that is learned, and it's something that can be improved, and it's something that can be can interfere as well. So the eyes working together as a team lets us know where we're located in space and allows us to see in depth. And depth perception is something that is really needed to navigate life accurately and efficiently and safely, whether that's just walking around your house, driving, in the supermarket. And so often falls are related to not being secure in terms of sense of self in space, and having vision problems where maybe there's a competition between which eye you're using. So it feels like you're leaning to the left or to the right more, or maybe your visual midline is off, or maybe one eye is more dominant than the other. And that can really cause a skewed perception of the world, which, it can be very scary in terms of new environments that we're navigating, but especially even the ones that we're comfortable in. Vision is our dominant sensory system. It should be guiding and leading, but in many cases it's interfering. And if we can tackle vision, we can tackle safety and balance and coordination so much more easily.
And I would think too, as we're aging, people may be dealing with cataracts or glaucoma, or simply their eyes may just be taking longer to adjust to these changes in light. Can you maybe speak to that a little bit too?
Absolutely. So structure is obviously important, and so too is function. Something like cataracts or glaucoma can impact our side vision, our peripheral vision, or can make it seem like we're looking through a foggy windshield, or things are distorted. And that can very often allow our balance to be compromised or change our perception of space. All of us who live long enough are going to get cataracts, but cataracts are something that are anatomical changes to the lens on the inside of our eyes from bad stuff in our environment and UV damage and chemicals. And so often it's a progressive slow disease, but especially if it's on one side versus the other progressing faster, that really can shift how you perceive the world, and can really make it so that the window to how you're functioning, you're not able to interpret as well as you would otherwise. So, so much of vision changes as we get older, but it really doesn't have to, especially from a functional standpoint. So many in your audience have arms that aren't long enough and are holding things farther away and needing reading glasses. And those anatomical changes are based off of the inside muscles of our eyes becoming more rigid and less flexible. But just like any muscle in our body, we can develop voluntary control over these systems if we're exercising them, if we're using them, if we're not kind of giving up and relying on cheaters or readers that do all the work for you. We can maintain flexibility and stamina, and being able to take in what's in front of us and what's around us at the same time really allows us to navigate through space efficiently and safely.
And it almost seems like some of the things you just mentioned, that if you're not using things, or you can lose it, right? Is that kind of what we're getting at?
The old if you don't use it, you lose it. That absolutely applies for the visual system. And even to take that another step, so many people go to eye doctors every year, and the eye doctor says, "Oh, your prescription has changed, and you've adapted to the lens you're in. You're needing something stronger to maintain that same clarity." And very often we can go down this vicious cycle where we keep eating up where we are, where our prescription is. But so often that eyesight blur, that distance blur, is a symptom of a near problem. Prescription shouldn't be changing every year unless we have stress from our environment and we don't have the tools in place to meet those demands. Yet so much of medicine is treating the symptom and not the problem, and the symptom is things are fuzzy. Well, we have lenses and prism and things that can make fuzzy things clear, but if we can understand the root cause of that in terms of why are the inside muscles or the outside muscles of the eyes not working in synergy, we address that problem, then the symptom of the blur gets a lot better.
Yeah, gosh, we've heard root cause so many times. Like, instead of just covering it up or addressing it with another prescription, there could be some other things to explore underneath that. I mean, what could some of these other things that we could explore be?
There are so many opportunities for learning and for improvement in terms of quality of life. We learn how to see, we learn how to use our eyes together. Eye turns or lazy eyes are brain problems manifesting through the eyes. Tracking problems, focusing problems are brain problems manifesting through the eyes. So what I do on a daily basis is help people use their eyes more efficiently to retrain their brain. But this type of brain training can literally rewire the software of our brain to change how we're using vision, can change how we're taking in the world around us and processing information. And really, vision shouldn't deteriorate as we age. So too shouldn't so many aspects of how our anatomy is functioning and our bones and our bodies. Yet, the kind of old school philosophy is, not everything stays the same, and you have a birthday every year, and things are altered. But with intention and with exercises and with training and even just with awareness, that doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah, you can stabilize, you can maintain, you can even improve as you age, especially if wherever your starting point was could have had improvement to begin with. What's interesting, I've heard you say this before, that there's a new pandemic, and that screens are really that new pandemic, and they're affecting our eyes, they're affecting our kids' eyes and our grandkids' eyes when we're looking at these phones and these tablets and these iPads, because sometimes that's the babysitter, or that is the thing that's going to help pacify the child in the moment, or maybe even ourselves in the moment. Can you talk about why screens are such a big issue?
So, this really is the new pandemic. And we've learned in the last few years that, especially with the more sedentary lifestyle that a lot of us are living in, and the huge introduction in screens and technology, especially for kids at earlier and earlier ages, many people are not visually ready for those demands. And as humans, we're not meant to be staring at screens all day long. The visual environments that we're all living in, but specifically the environment that our children are living in, is different than it was a generation ago. Kevin, when you and I were kids, our parents had to drag us in from being outside, and all we want to do is play and throw the ball around and explore in the woods. And now parents are literally dragging their kids outside because they're stuck in their basement playing video games or with their head buried in screens and on phones. And it's creating a really scary situation where not only are symptoms emerging like eye strain and fatigue and headaches and blurry vision and emotional problems and psychological problems, but we're now seeing that nearsightedness is at an all-time high. And screens present all this visual stress up close that forces our brain and our eyes to actually alter. Our eyes elongate and become more nearsighted. And we now have research and data coming out from the last 3 years that, especially with kids, nearsightedness is at an all-time high. It's estimated by 2050 that 50% of the world will be nearsighted. And, if we look back to when we landed on the moon, at least in America, about 25% of the population was nearsighted. And if we go a little farther forward, but still back to like 9/11, it was about 48-50% of the population. And now this is this snowball effect that's increasing. Two parents in today's world who were to have a child, if neither parent was nearsighted, their child would have a 1 in 4 chance of becoming nearsighted. If one parent was nearsighted, a 1 in 3 chance. And if both parents are, a 1 in 2 chance. So nearsightedness has two main components: environment and genetics. We can't control who the parents are, but from an environment standpoint, so many of vision problems are maladaptations or bad habits from the environment we're in. And there's so much brightness and contrast and stress that comes with staring at a screen, especially at an early age before the visual system is developed. So many kids are now just buried in screens and don't even know how to interact with each other, and aren't exploring the visualization that comes with being a child, and navigating our world and learning how to use our visual system. So it's scary to think about where we are. I think it's even scary to think about where we're going, especially when we can look at other countries that value technology and education, and nearsightedness is blowing up everywhere.
Gosh, I mean, it really is important. It really is important. And I mean, obviously from the nearsightedness perspective, and then also what you were just talking about is it's almost like people are developing relationships with their technologies, their phones. Like you're building a relationship with your iPhone or your tablet or whatever, and you just keep going back to it. You keep going back to it. I do.
And you brought up children who are, that's the babysitter, or oftentimes, there's a time and a place for that. And we all, as parents, have been there, but we should really be limiting screen time. I mean, I tell parents, if your child is 18 months or younger, there really should be no screen time unless it's, FaceTiming with a loved one that they wouldn't see otherwise. If they're 18 months to 2 years old or so, it should be maximum 30 minutes a day. Same thing, really high quality content. If we're 2 to 5 years old, maximum an hour. And 6 and above, at least the American Academy of Pediatrics says 2 hours is max. But I always say as much time, whatever time we're per day. But that's too much for most people. So we should be balancing however much time we're spending on screens with at least that much time outdoors, hopefully more, but also taking tons of vision breaks. A lot of people have heard of the 20-20-20 rule lately, which is not more than 20 minutes on a screen without taking a break for at least 20 seconds and looking at something 20 feet away, and essentially disengaging, relaxing the focusing system and giving yourself vision and movement breaks. So much can be slowed down or avoided if we're giving those sensory systems a rest and we're maintaining some flexibility. But kids who are spending all weekend buried in their basement with, engaging with video games, there's so much negative that comes with that, emotionally, cognitively, visually, psychologically. It's scary.
And when we talk about screens, are we including everything like TVs and phones and tablets and computers? Like we're doing a podcast and a YouTube-ish interview right now. So like this is an hour of screen time, right? Is that what we would count that too?
We are feeding the problem here. So ideally we want the largest screen possible as far away as possible. Okay. So this gives everyone listening a chance to go buy the biggest on sale TV that you can find. There's so much less visual demand when we're engaging in the distance versus when we're up close and we have to converge our eyes and focus our eyes, which really only happens when we're with tasks within arm's length. And if you were to even just take your fist right now and squeeze it really hard, after about 5 seconds, your hand starts to hurt. But if you were to squeeze and let go and squeeze and let go, you could maintain that flexion for a really long amount of time. Our focusing muscles are circular muscles behind our pupil. So when we look close, it gets small, the pupil and the muscle constricts. When we look far, it gets big and relaxes. When we're stuck on a screen within arm's length, that muscle is literally constricted. And so that's causing tension, and it's causing the autonomic nervous system, the fight or flight system, to be imbalanced. And it's presenting this new stress on the system where, absolutely the smaller and closer the device and the smaller the detail, the harder it is to engage for most people. But just like on this interview here, I mean, we should be kind of looking through the TV or looking through the screen and looking soft and opening up periphery and hopefully pausing and getting up and going on a walk here. But I always teach my patients tricks on how to fake it on a Zoom or on a telehealth call where you can actually, not engage with this plane. You can engage with a plane behind and kind of open up your side vision so that you're not stuck in this tunnel vision. Same setup.
And sometimes, what I do on my personal computer and then also on our phones and tablets is there are those nighttime modes. And well, at least on the computer, there's Flux, F.Lux, F-L-U-X that you can look up. And that can help you slide to have a screen that is not as bright and as blue light, and it's more warm. I don't know how effective that is on the actual iPhone. I've always wondered, is it, because sometimes when I've looked at my phone late at night, which is a no-no, but I'm looking at it like right before I'm getting ready to lay my head down. And I can tell that does affect, my quality of sleep or ability to get into sleep when I do that, because that blue light is communicating daylight to the eyes. And the brain.
Can we talk about blue light?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So first of all, blue light is not bad. Blue light is in the sunlight outside is actually really helpful for us. But artificial blue light that's blasted to our brains for hours and hours, that's not so good. And we now have compelling evidence that your circadian rhythm is disrupted and from staring at screens too late in the evening. And we have these cells in the back of our eye and our retina that only respond to light, that are responsible for releasing melatonin, which triggers our body when to be sleepy and when to not. And when those cells are overstimulated, it absolutely disrupts sleep-wake signaling and causes the suppression of the secretion or the release of melatonin. And then those cells being overstimulated is definitely related to migraines and headaches. And we now have a lot of information out that's showing how that impacts things. But blue light as a positive promotes alertness, regulates mood often, and it is great for us. So we should, there's definitely adjustments that can be made to certain devices. I always tell people start with the contrast and the brightness as low as possible and then slowly increase it. And usually kind of the sweet spot for most people is like 40 to 65% or so. But the night shift mode that you mentioned on iPhones and iDevices, that's definitely helpful. And especially blue light filters. Blue light is a certain wavelength of the visible spectrum of light. And it's around 400 to kind of 450 nanometers. So something that blocks, let's say, 433 nanometers could be considered a blue light filter. But that's the really low tier ones that you can get on Amazon for a couple dollars. If you're blocking a much larger, wider range, it's that much more protective. And then that high energy, short wavelength light is easier for the brain to contend with, and can make it so we can be a lot more comfortable on a screen, but also it's a lot easier to fall asleep at night as if you are on screens closer to bedtime, but at least a few hours before bedtime, great excuse to say, no, thank you.
Yeah. And I'm so glad we touched on blue light a little bit more, because it's important in the morning, right? The sun has natural blue light that's going to come from that. So when you get up in the morning, one of the best things you can actually do for your sleep at night is get up and get outside and get some sunlight, not necessarily staring directly at the sun, right? But like get some sunlight on your eyes. And that's going to communicate to this thing called the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your brain. And that's going to help tell your body, hey, it's time to be awake and time to be active. So that can definitely help you sleep better at night. And then before we go to a few other things, what are your thoughts on like blue light glasses and like amber glasses and things like that? Do you like those?
Yeah, so they can be wonderful. In glasses, there's probably four alterations that we can make. We can put lenses in glasses, we can put filters in glasses, we can put tints in glasses, and we can put prism in glasses. And glasses just alter how light and information is received by the brain and then processed by the brain. So, the blue light filters in glasses can be very effective. But again, you want a large, wide range, but then also what I call therapeutic lenses, or lenses that are intended to improve performance with digital devices. Those can be game changers. And that's very often a small amount of plus prescription or magnification prescription, which basically changes the visual stress associated with that near task, makes it easier for the brain to respond to it, but also changes the internal response to that visual stress and allows us to rely on our side vision a little bit more rather than our central vision when we are on a screen. And a combination of blue light with low plus, that's the weakest amount, the most balanced, that gives the most improvement, can be really effective, especially for kids. But in terms of kind of the amber and the different tints, there's many tints out there that can be life-changing for people. There's two in particular that seem to have the greatest impact positively. One would be what's technically called an FL41. So it's like a yellowish, orangish lens. And a lot of neurologists recommend those for migraines and headaches. A lot of people with certain symptoms, something called visual snow, where there's this kind of hypersensitivity and all these dots floating around, those can respond really well with amber lights. And then there's also another color tint that's kind of like a purplish bluish called Omega. Wonderful for many people with head injuries or suffering from concussions or strokes, which basically just changes how the brain is processing visible light. Prism is also can be effective. Prism essentially just moves where something's located in space. And there's prism that can move the world to where the eyes are. There's prism that can shift your perception of where something's located. And then your body and your visual system can be giving more similar signals for the brain to filter and process rather than differing ones. For those who have strokes or brain injuries, if there's a midline shift, if you're navigating through space and it feels like you're moving to the left, let's say, but we're actually measuring that your visual midline is decentered, we can literally take prism, something called yoke prism, and move the world to where that midline is, or oppositely move the peripheral vision or the side vision to where you're functioning so that things seem a lot straighter. People with visual field defects, let's say we have a stroke and we can't, we've lost peripheral awareness to the right, we can literally move the world from the right to straight. So now our field of view is that much larger. So much can be done with lenses and with glasses as tools to help aid performance, but these would be therapeutic, not compensatory, not glasses that do the work for you, glasses that allow for better eye-brain body integration. But in many cases, the ceiling's that much higher if we can retrain the brain to change how they're using their visual system through vision therapy and rehabilitation or other types of brain training techniques.
That's amazing. I want to get into brain training in just a minute, but you did touch on like head injuries too. I know you work with a lot of professional athletes. I know you do a lot of stuff with sports teams and things like that. What is the connection between your, maybe a head injury and your vision?
Yeah, I'm so glad you bring this up. So there are more areas of our brain dedicated to processing vision than all of our other senses combined. And in fact, 2/3 of the neurons that enter our brain actually originate or come from our eyes. So it's kind of impossible to have a head injury and not have vision be impacted. It's just kind of, okay, at what level is this? And what's so common with concussion is that suddenly these previously normal activities of daily living, like going to the mall or grocery store, can become so visually overwhelming. And because the brain can't process all that sensory input, and reading and engaging with screens can elicit this dizziness and nausea and vertigo and blurry vision. And so very often eyesight isn't impacted after a concussion or a head injury, but I would argue vision always is. It's just a matter of, are we bypassing what has occurred, or are we actually finding ways to tap back into those pathways and reestablish order and reconnect what was damaged? I'm a big believer that many head injuries, the visual components of them don't resolve on our own. We just learn how to bypass and compensate. But with the right work, you can literally rewire the brain to get back to where we were, to establish order from all of that disorder and get to previous level of function. It just requires, a lot of motivation, a lot of compliance, and the right type of work to get there. The old school philosophy of you got your bell rung, get back in there, or sit in a dark room, don't do anything. We're now learning how much more we have to learn about head injuries and how much more we need to know. But also we've learned a ton in the last, I would honestly say, 3 to 5 years, comparatively to decades previously.
Yeah, and this is so relevant too. I mean, not only in sports, because we see this all the time. Those are the headlines around concussions and players getting injured and things like that. But also in adults that maybe have fallen, hit their head on something, that could be also something that needs to be addressed too. Are there any other maybe conditions or diagnoses that a person will receive and there's a connection to their vision and their eyesight that they're just not aware of? What other ones might fall into that bucket?
Yeah, so let's hit on the top 5-ish, because I could talk for a while here. So one of the most common is something called convergence insufficiency, which by the language sounds like you can't cross your eyes. But in most cases, that's not what convergence insufficiency means. Convergence insufficiency is fragile eye coordination up close, where we're perceiving things farther back in space than where something's located. So converging is what happens when things approach us, or when we're reading, or we have to get the sweet spot of both eyes to point to the same place. So quick test everybody could do here: take a pen or pencil, make sure there's one tip, bring it down your midline, try and see one all the way in. It should be effortless to our nose. 1 out of 5 people doing this is going to notice that that's not easy, and that we're actually seeing double or eliciting symptoms beyond a few inches away. There's an incredibly high correlation with kids in particular with convergence insufficiency and inattention, or ADD or ADHD or dyslexia diagnoses, when those are just labels slapped on behaviors that, like our medical world so often likes to do. But very often those can be vision problems masking the same behaviors. It's not like there's a blood test where you can measure ADD or ADHD, but if it's hard to converge the eyes, and then we can't focus our eyes, and we can't track, how can our brain possibly stay focused on the task compared to if that was not the case? And a child in a classroom who can't sit and stare at a desk for more than a few seconds without having to take a rest and look up, or is relying on their ears to take in what the teacher's presenting rather than their eyes, they often get mislabeled as having these diagnoses. So, a child who is squirmy with desk work, loves to be read to, but doesn't want to read on their own, or, just has poor comprehension or concentration with reading, chances are there's a hidden vision problem that probably is interfering with function, and one that's probably treatable. So convergence insufficiency is huge. Depth perception is another one where any brain at any age can be rewired. There's neuroplasticity at every age. Right now, I have a 98, 97, and 92-year-old in office treatment with us. There's more malleability, and there's probably better neuroplasticity when we're much younger than when we're much older. But with the right arrangement of conditions, we can learn how to tap into areas of the brain that have not been developed. And a lot of doctors will say that there's this critical period from birth to age 8 where if something happens beyond that, sorry, vision is what it is. Absolutely not true. We have research and literature to disprove that. But that's what I was taught in school, and I haven't been out. I've only been out 15 years from med school, so that's scary. So at any age, we can develop the ability to use our eyes together and have our brain turn on to that information to see in 3D. And another screening test for that is if you're seeing a 3D movie and you want to take those glasses off, or you're getting symptoms quickly, or you're not seeing 3D, or it's just causing any type of discomfort, that's almost a kind of a line in the sand saying you have a functional vision problem that is very likely treatable. Eye turns or lazy eyes. Eye turns are, in most cases, brain problems manifesting through the eyes. So unless they're addressed on a brain basis, surgery, let's say, for eye muscle challenges is not going to make things better. In many cases, makes things worse. Usually a cosmetic cure for an eye turn from surgery is kind of the best case scenario, but almost never is there a functional cure because learning is needed to develop depth and to see in 3D. So the vast majority of eye turns are not eye muscle strength or length problems. They're visual developmental delays and coordination problems. And same thing with a lazy eye, amblyopia. That is the inability to see small letters at a certain distance with glasses or without glasses. You can't see the small letters. There's one of three reasons for that to happen. And just like we can develop depth perception, we can develop the ability to improve eyesight, to, in many cases, equalize skills with advanced training, where the old school treatment of patching, we now know, is no longer standard of care if you are up to date with the latest research and literature of this century compared to previous ones. Amblyopia is a two-eye problem manifesting on one side. We address it on a two-eye basis. We can make a lot of progress. How was that?
Yeah, that's amazing. No, that's amazing. And I'm sure people are listening to this and they're like, wow, they just made some connections there too. And then also, let's talk about vision therapy and this process and things like that, we've talked about. Like, you got to train the brain, basically. You got to train your vision, right? So can we talk about what is this and what does it even look like when we're training?
Absolutely. And I would imagine most people hearing this today are probably saying, vision what? And they've never heard of vision therapy. And that's a problem. Vision therapy is kind of like physical therapy for the brain through the eyes, or almost teaching people how to use their eyes to retrain their brain. And it's not like a sprained knee or MCL where you need physical therapy and here's the amount of sessions you need. I think one of the negatives with vision therapy is there's not a whole lot of consistency on what vision therapy looks like. But from a standpoint of being able to train the eyes to work together as a team and to train the brain and eyes and body to be an efficient, cohesive unit, that's really the goal of vision therapy. There's a wonderful organization, and then the website would be www.covd.org. That's the College of Optometrists and Vision Development. That's the international organization that board certifies doctors in vision therapy. There's a locate a doctor section where you can literally type in your address or your zip code, and it'll list all the providers within whatever search radius you put in. If the doctor you see has the letters FCOVD after their name, that lets you know that they're board certified in vision therapy and rehab, and so they're a specialist in this area. You don't have to be a board certified fellow to be able to offer vision therapy, but I would argue the level of care is different when that is the case. But so many doctors with eye exams are looking at eyesight and eye health and heavily set on getting you to see those 20/20 letters. And so few look at function and look at how the eyes are working as a unit. And that's something that can take a very expensive piece of equipment. You take your finger or your pencil and say, tell me when you see two, and you follow this across midline. Eye should be moving smoothly. We shouldn't be having eye and head movements when we're following something. We should be able to focus on something no matter where it is. We should see one and it should be clear. And if it's not, that's a screening tool to let you know that a lot can be done there to help enhance and improve quality of life. But very often reading, driving, learning, sports, so much can be impacted by vision interfering. And most people don't even know that vision therapy is the missing piece they needed until they, are enlightened by what's occurring, how that influences life, and then they rewire their brain. They go through the treatment, and so many doors open up.
And you've created this program called ScreenFit, right? And this is I mentioned this earlier. It's like the premier eye doctor online vision training program designed to transform your tired, strained, blurry computer eyes into HD clear vision. Like that sounds pretty powerful stuff. So could you talk a little bit about ScreenFit too?
Sure. So back in March of 2020, when we all thought the world was ending and we were all stuck at home and listening to news and thinking, what's going on here? There was a day where I looked across the room and I saw all three of my really young kids with some sort of device around and their heads buried in them. And my wife and I are psycho to begin with devices. So even the fact that they found these and that they were there was scary. But I immediately, a light bulb went off in my head, and I recognized we don't know what's going on in life now, but this is going to be a big problem. And so many people are now going to be stuck on screens. And from the thousands of patients we've worked with, I know how that negatively impacts quality of life, vision, function. I knew at that time I got to do something about this. So before the pandemic, if I couldn't help somebody 90 to 100%, I didn't want to work with them. But now, because of the pandemic, I realized helping somebody 30, 40, 50, 70% is still helping. And so ScreenFit is a wonderful kind of vision wellness program. It's a website right now. It will connect you to a database where that it hosts the course, but pretty soon it's going to be an app. But it's essentially a daily workout for 10 to 15 minutes a day, intended 5 days a week. So it's 30 workouts in phase 1, 30 in phase 2. So it essentially would be 6 weeks and 6 weeks, so 12 weeks total. But the goal of it is to establish the right visual foundation in place to be able to meet the demands of staring at screens, and to improve productivity and efficiency, and to be able to stare at screens for longer without having all of these terrible symptoms like eye strain and fatigue and headaches and blurry vision. So really, anybody who stares at a screen for more than a few minutes would benefit from this. And, we've had as young as 5-year-olds in it and as old as 88-year-olds in it. And across the board, dramatic improvements in symptoms. Most people see an improvement with symptoms within a week. And for many people, it's been life-changing. And I'm very blessed now that there's a lot of very large organizations who are going to be offering this to their employees or to their subscribers. And for right now, at least it's open to the public. But it's a great way, almost like if you're wanting to do a workout from home for your body. It's kind of like doing sit-ups, air squats, and push-ups. If you're regimented, if you're compliant, you're going to get into better shape. But this is something that has lots of different, more tailored workouts that can at least improve visual skills and abilities. And in many cases, office-based vision therapy is absolutely what's needed and should always be the gold standard. But this can essentially help almost anybody, especially if there's symptoms and inefficiencies with reading or computer engagement.
That sounds amazing. And I know you had mentioned to me previously to this that if people want to get access to that, I think you're going to give them a discount code or something like that to use for what the code would be BoneCoach, and where would they use that at?
So it's going to be BoneCoach 10.
Awesome.
BoneCoach 10. So if you go to ScreenFit.com and you click enroll, there's a place that says putting in a code, and that gives you 10% off of the enrollment fee. And because what you're doing is so powerful and changing so many lives, want to give at least some discount there, so we can give that 10% there. But it's you're going to see a reduction in symptoms within a week, and it's ideally 10 to 15 minutes a day, but it could be the type of thing that is extended for longer. And a lot of the activities, you don't need any equipment. It all can be done on a phone or a tablet or a screen on purpose, because those are where we're spending so much time now. But a lot of the exercises or lessons that you learn in there, you can literally do at a stoplight when you're in a car or lying in bed at night, and does a really nice job of hitting all the main visual symptoms and systems to reprogram what's occurring and get a lot more equality between each eye. So a lot of the work is going to be with your hand over one eye, doing work on the left side, hand over the other eye, doing work on the other side, so we can equalize the skills. So when both eyes are open, the brain doesn't have a choice over which one to use because they're a little bit more equal. But then also similar activities where we're also doing with both eyes there too. So check it out, www.screenfit.com.
I will be checking it. I will be checking it out personally, and I will be jumping into this, and especially because I spend time in front of this computer. It may even just be because we're having this conversation right now, but I've just noticed maybe my eyes are a little bit more sore after this conversation, just because I'm maybe a little more aware of the brightness of the computer screen and how close I'm sitting to it, and some of these other things. So if you've got headaches and eye strain, blurry vision, fatigue, or even if you've got like neck, back pain, lack of energy, then check out this ScreenFit thing. This program Dr. Bryce has put together, because it's going to be an amazing resource. And then use code BoneCoach10 at ScreenFit.com. And then I have a couple other questions for you that are just curiosity. So I use a red light. I like red light therapy, right? So could you maybe talk? And I also there's an IR function on there too, so that you can either just do the red lights or you can do the IR also. Are there any downsides to just looking at those lights without eye protection on, whether it's red light or whether it's red light plus IR?
So not only are there not downsides, there can be tremendous upsides. There's a whole branch of developmental optometry, or of kind of one of my subspecialties, that's focused on something called syntonics, or light therapy. And it's literally, I mean, it's machines, but there's home devices as well, where we can prescribe certain wavelengths of light to engage with for a certain period of time that can literally activate different cortical brain cells to, let's say, balance the sympathetic nervous system, or to help with, how you feel in cold, dark winter months and seasonal affective disorders. And with kids and individuals on the autism spectrum, we can literally shift visual processing based off of the type of light that we're engaged with. And there's a lot of great information out there with light therapy. Infrared light is wonderful from an anti-inflammatory standpoint. I have a sauna at home that has infrared lights, and I have the red blasting at all times. But we know that from even just a cellular cleanup standpoint, and what infrared light does for overall inflammation, but especially for our mitochondria and healing anything that's a lot of our damaged cells from just the crazy lives that so many of us have lived over the years, and hopefully we can be mindful for. So kudos to you for doing what you can there. I think if it's good quality light, there's not going to be any harm there. Certain UV light and certain sunlight, you don't want to stare at for too long. But there are certain filters, and I would imagine that all those have appropriate filters, and no harm there if it's a reputable company.
Yeah. And then another question would be, and this could even be a quick one too, is when we're out, at the beach, or we're on vacation and we're out there and the sun's out reflecting, or we've got the sun shining down in our eyes, should we be bringing sunglasses with us?
Absolutely. So again, sunlight is good for our eyes, and eyes are windows to our soul. We want light coming in. But especially for kids, or especially if you're outside for an extended period of time, we can slow down the progression of disease processes that occur, like cataract formation, macular degeneration, if we're having UV protection. But the white areas of our eyes, our conjunctiva, can become sunburn. And you probably notice with your kids, if you're at the beach all day or on a boat and there's all this glare coming up, literally the eyes are red afterwards. And being protective there can help with dryness and irritation and even inflammation. But one little caveat here, I get asked this all the time. Do you know why eyes are red after swimming in the pool?
I don't.
It's not from the chlorine, as crazy as that sounds.
Really?
It's for urination in the pool, and a chemical in there that combines with the chlorine and the pH of our eyes, and this certain compound called chloramine. Eyes are red from pool that people have peed in.
Wow.
So as gross as that is, you'll probably notice a neighborhood pool, eyes are more red than when you go to a pool where it's just you guys in there. And if there's just you and one other person and your eyes are red, you can kind of know who to point the finger to.
And that's interesting about chloramines, because we did just get a filtration system put on our entire house to actually filter out all the chloramines and chlorine and things like that. So great touching note on that. Well, this has been really informative. I've learned a lot. I hope everybody listening, I'm sure you've learned a lot as well. If you found this helpful, be sure to share this with somebody who you think could use help with their vision, which seems like everyone could use some help with the inundation of screens we have these days. So share this with them, like it, subscribe. If you found it helpful, leave a positive rating review. And then in terms of where you can find all the show notes, bonecoach.com/Bryce Appelbaum, ScreenFit. And then make sure you go to screenfit.com and use code BoneCoach10. And then could you also share with everybody where can they find you?
Absolutely. And pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me on and being able to empower your audience here. So on Instagram, Dr. Bryce Appelbaum, DrBryceAppelbaum. We like to make things difficult. My ancestors spelled Appelbaum not the way that you would spell apple, which is a little frustrating. Then you can find me at www.concussionclear.com, appelbaumvision.com, and screenfit.com. Although that's a mouthful and a lot of websites, stay tuned in the next couple months. There will be a new branding and a new place to find and host everything.
You can always search Dr. Bryce Appelbaum, Apple, Appelbaum. I actually searched the other way before, but when I was looking up Instagram, and I didn't find you, but now I switched it and I found you. So, well, I'm glad we got a chance to chat. And for everybody listening, we'll see you in the next episode. Hey, it's Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. Hope you found that episode helpful and that you enjoyed it. Just one last reminder, if you haven't done so already, head over to bonecoach.com, sign up for your free 7-day osteoporosis kickstart. It's going to tell you everything you need to do to start getting on the path to improvement. Hope you found this helpful. I'm your Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. I'll see you soon.